Hi everyone, I'm Hai Bo. The focus of today's language workshop is the effective use of verbs. Although sentences can do without some parts of speech, a verb is always required. In some cases, we can even use a mere verb as a one-word sentence. We definitely need to learn how to use verb effectively to improve our writing skills.
You may wonder, what are verbs? Verbs are action words. They describe the action that is taking place. Verbs show movement and help readers to imagine an activity, like think, speak, agree. The most powerful writers use verbs quite effectively to illustrate their writing. An action verb explains what the subject of the sentence is doing or has done. They are used to deliver important information in a sentence and add impact and purpose. Using action verbs effectively makes sentences and statements more concise, which is easier for readers to understand. In this way, the writing is more reader-centered and persuasive. Here comes the question: how to use verbs effectively? Well, we can learn two simple strategies in our writings. That is, replacing forms of be verbs and carefully choosing between active and passive voice. We need to know what are be verbs before replacing them. Be verbs indicate a state of being or existing here on this planet. The main forms of be verbs are is, are, was, be, been, and being. Be verbs do not show action. Although be verbs are sometimes necessary, too many of them tend to make a piece of writing seem wordy and lifeless. We can always replace a be verb with an action verb to shorten and strengthen a sentence, as action verbs can vividly show readers what action the subject is performing in the sentence. Let's look at an example. I was the boss of a team of 6 service employees. This sentence contains 10 words, and it focuses on the be verb, was. If we change the be verb into an action verb, say supervise, the sentence then contains 7 words and emphasizes on the action supervise to show the readers what I did as a boss. In this way, the capability of the writer is more convincing. Here's another sentence. It is my intention to finish this task as soon as possible. If we use I as the subject and choose the action verb intend correspondingly, we can emphasize on the subject, make the sentence shorter and the meaning clearer. Action verbs can be written in either the active or passive voice. Both are commonly used in different situations, so we need to carefully choose between these two. Active voice means the subject of the sentence is performing the action. For example, Johnny shot the bear. Passive voice means the subject receives the action. It means something or someone else is performing the act. The passive voice always consists of a be verb and the past participle, so that the verb in the passive voice always consists of 2 or sometimes 3 words. The agent performing the action may appear in a by phrase or may be omitted. For example, the bear was shot by Johnny. Which sentence do you prefer? Why? You probably noticed that the sentence in active voice gives the sharpest image of the event. Perhaps you also noticed that the sentence in active voice has just 4 words, whereas the one in passive voice contains 6 words. So how do we decide on the active or passive choice? Sentences in active voice are also more concise than those in passive voice because fewer words are required to express action in active voice than in passive. Using active voice for the majority of your sentences makes your meaning clear for readers and keeps the sentences from becoming too complicated. For instance, if we compare the following 2 sentences, action on the bill as being considered by the committee, and the committee is considering action on the bill, we can easily notice that the second one is much shorter using active voice. Therefore, to make writing clear and direct, writers prefer the active voice, especially in non-scientific writing situations. But sometimes writers find using an indirect expression is rhetorically effective in a given situation, so they choose passive voice. Here are 3 common situations where passive voice is preferred. First, if the person responsible wishes to remain unknown, we prefer passive voice. For example, the new rule was enacted to tighten security. By using passive voice, the subject who performs the action can remain unmentioned. The second situation is that the one who does the action is unknown. For example, the Oriental rug was made in China. In this case, the person who made the rug is unknown and unimportant. Hence, the person is omitted using passive voice. The last situation is that the writer wants to place emphasis on an important word. Passive voice allows the important word to become the subject of a sentence. For example, the needs of the student should be considered. By using passive voice, the word needs is placed at the beginning of the sentence, hence emphasized. Now, let's read and compare these sentences. In each of these examples, the passive voice makes sense because the agent is relatively unimportant compared to the action itself and what is acted upon. Now, I'd like to highlight scientific writings. Writers in the sciences conventionally use passive voice more often than writers in other discourses do, because using passive voice allows one to write without using personal pronouns or the names of particular researchers as the subjects of sentences. This practice helps to create the appearance of an objective, fact-based discourse, because writers can present research and conclusions without attributing them to particular agents. Instead, the writing appears to convey information that is not limited or biased by individual perspectives or personal interests. For instance, the experimental data used in the present work were collected in a sign-generated laboratory. Action verbs are vigorous. They are direct communicators. Using action verbs effectively can greatly improve our writing. How can we do that? Yes, we can replace forms of be verbs like am, is, are with powerful action verbs. We also need to carefully choose between active and passive voice, as both have their advantages, and we have to consider our purposes of writing.
Today we have learnt tips on using verbs more effectively. Try to use these tips in your writing. Stay tuned in for more language tips.